Hello, dear friends. Tell me honestly, have you ever asked yourself what really happens to your body if you masturbate every day? The internet is full of whispers and horror stories. Prostate inflammation, chronic fatigue, cancer. You're causing yourself impotence. Sounds scary, doesn't it? Now, pay attention. All of that is a lie, at least according to the most authoritative science. Yes, you heard that right. Surprisingly, daily masturbation may not only be harmless, but actually beneficial for your prostate. But before we uncover the truth, I ask you to do one simple thing. Before you settle in, hit the like button and subscribe, only if you genuinely appreciate what I'm doing here. Especially if you're over 50, this video could change the way you view your health forever. So, to understand the full picture, let's first get to know the hero of our story, the prostate gland. This small walnut-sized organ is located right beneath the bladder. Its primary job is to produce the fluid that forms part of semen. Sounds simple, but its function is much more complex. The urethra passes through it. It wraps around the body's main pipeline. As a man gets older, the prostate becomes especially vulnerable. Difficulty urinating, waking up at night, the feeling of not fully emptying, all of these can be linked to it. No wonder any rumor about what might harm this area causes anxiety. Here's another interesting fact. The prostate is one of the few organs without pain receptors. That means inflammation or congestion can develop silently, without clear symptoms, until it's too late. That's why rumors about the dangers of masturbation seem so alarming. If you believe that frequent is bad, you might end up depriving yourself of one of the simplest ways to maintain your health. But what does science say? We'll get into that in the next part, and trust me, you'll be shocked. Because the truth turns everything you thought you knew upside down. You might be surprised, but even many adult men don't fully understand what the prostate is or why it causes so much concern. It's small, weighs less than 30 grams, yet it can ruin your quality of life more than many chronic illnesses. I've seen it with my own eyes dozens of times. Men come to me complaining about a weak urine stream, nightly trips to the bathroom, uncomfortable pressure in the perineum. And almost all of them had already been diagnosed by the internet or their friends before seeing me. They say, "It's because I do it too often." You know, I do understand. But more often than not, that's not true. The myth that frequent masturbation wears out the prostate comes not from medicine, but from 19th century morality. Back then, it was seen as a harmful, sinful habit that led to weakness, madness, even death. Seriously, you can find references to self-exhaustion due to excessive sexuality in old medical books. But that was nothing more than moral panic disguised as science. Real medicine didn't begin testing these claims until the late 20th century. And guess what? With every passing decade, it becomes clearer. Masturbation isn't the problem, the myths surrounding it are. Here's a fact that will definitely surprise you. The highest number of chronic prostate inflammation, prostatitis, cases I've seen were among those who abstained for too long. You see, the prostate isn't a storage unit. It constantly produces fluid. If there's no regular release, congestion begins, inflammation develops, and tissues become irritated. It's like an old teapot. If you don't pour the water out, it stagnates and limescale forms. But let me be clear, we're only talking about symptoms so far. What daily masturbation does to the prostate in the long term, we'll cover in the next part. And I promise you, you're about to hear one of the most shocking medical facts of recent decades. When I first saw the results of this study, I literally asked, "Are you serious?" It turns out that one of the world's most reputable institutions, Harvard School of Public Health, decided to settle the debate once and for all. They didn't argue online or conduct a small survey. They conducted a massive long-term study involving nearly 32,000 men. And it lasted, get this, almost 20 years. The researchers tracked these men's lifestyles, including how often they ejaculated, and compared it with data on prostate cancer development. And what did they find? A true breakthrough in scientific literature. Men who ejaculated 21 times or more per month had a 33% lower risk of developing prostate cancer compared to those who did so only 4 to 7 times a month. Can you see how radically that changes everything? What was once believed to be dangerous and harmful turned out to be a protective factor. It's like finding out that eating chocolate every day helps lower your blood sugar. Shocking, right? And this wasn't the only study. Australian scientists reached similar conclusions. They also found that men with higher sexual activity had a significantly reduced risk of prostate cancer. At this point, patients usually look at me in disbelief. Doctor, so now I have to do it every day? I smile and say, as long as you feel fine, and it doesn't interfere with your life, it's not only normal, it might even be beneficial. By the way, few people know this. Among all male cancers, prostate cancer is one of the most insidious. It grows slowly, but almost always goes unnoticed. That's why prevention plays such a major role. Now imagine, you have a simple, free, accessible tool to help prevent it. Isn't that amazing? Next, we'll explore why the body reacts this way to frequent ejaculation. What exactly happens in the prostate when it functions regularly? So how can a normal physiological process become a powerful shield against one of the most common male diseases? The answer lies in the so-called prostate stagnation hypothesis. Imagine the prostate as a complex system of thin ducts. If those ducts aren't used for a long time, the substances meant to be released start to build up. Old cells, protein debris, possibly even harmful substances, all of it may settle, like rust in pipes. Now think, when you regularly flush these ducts, you eliminate the stagnation. Masturbation, or any form of ejaculation, becomes a self-cleaning mechanism. Many men don't even realize that nature has built in regular technical maintenance, yet they avoid it out of fear or guilt. And that's not all. There's a second theory that I really respect as a doctor. Frequent ejaculation stimulates cell renewal. Every time cells divide, there's a chance of mutation. If you speed up the cycle, old cells are cleared sooner, and new ones form before mutations take root. It's like updating your computer system faster than a virus can corrupt the files. The third theory relates to stress and inflammation. Numerous studies show that regular sexual activity reduces cortisol levels and overall inflammation in the body. And chronic inflammation, by the way, is one of the key causes of most cancers. An interesting fact, in ancient China, there was a practice called therapeutic ejaculation. Men practiced it specifically for health, not pleasure. Do you now see how physiologically justified something we once thought of as a bad habit actually is? But it's important to remember, everything is good in moderation, and we'll talk about that too. For now, let's look at why some men, despite everything said above, still experience urination problems. Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night with a strange pressure in your lower abdomen, rushed to the bathroom, only to have a weak stream and the feeling that your bladder is still half full? If you recognize yourself in this description, you're not alone. This is one of the most common complaints I hear from men over 60. And you know what scares me the most? They think it's just age-related and that nothing can be done. Some even blame themselves. Maybe I do it too often. I always calmly respond, no. More likely, you just haven't seen a doctor in too long. The thing is, even if you have an active sex life, the prostate can still become clogged, like a pipe with limescale. There's even an unofficial term, prostatic plug. It's a buildup of protein clumps, cellular debris, and possibly microcytes of inflammation. They hide in the tissue folds and interfere with the prostate's function. That's when the nighttime trips begin, the slow stream, the tension in the lower abdomen. All of this could be eased if you start with something simple, paying attention to yourself. I recently watched an interesting presentation. It talked about an old Asian recipe based on spring water and herbs that helps unblock such congestion. Not a cure-all, of course, but as an additional method, quite intriguing. If you're interested, I can talk more about it in future episodes. For now, the most important thing to understand is this. Masturbation is not the solution to all problems, but it's not the cause either. If you have symptoms, don't delay. Get checked, do an ultrasound, get a PSA test. It's much more important than blaming or defending your habits. In the next part, we'll look at why even the most active sex life doesn't cancel out other risk factors, and what else you can and should do for prostate health. Many men, after hearing about the magical power of frequent ejaculation, immediately decide, this is it. A simple solution. I'll do it every day, no cancer. But friends, let me be honest. It's not that simple. As a doctor, I must remind you, there's a big difference between correlation and causation. Yes, science has shown that men with high ejaculation frequency have a lower risk of cancer. But that doesn't mean this alone protects the prostate. Now imagine this situation. One man masturbates frequently but eats fatty foods, doesn't exercise, smokes, and skips medical checkups. Another does it less often but eats well, walks regularly, keeps his weight in check, and sees a doctor regularly. Guess who will be in better shape in 10 years? That's why I always tell my patients, ejaculation frequency is just one tool in the health toolbox. Imagine your body is an old but valuable car. You can flush the pipes, but if you ignore the oil, the brakes, and the rust, it will still break down. Same here. By the way, interesting fact, men with active sex lives usually lead more active and conscious lifestyles overall. That's why some researchers believe it's not just about the process itself, but the whole set of habits that come with it. So yes, masturbation can help. But even more important are diet, movement, avoiding bad habits, and most importantly, preventive visits to the urologist. It's like an army. One good soldier is nice. But an army with artillery, reconnaissance, and proper boots, that's even better. In the next part, I'll talk about what exactly to eat, drink, and avoid if you want to give your prostate maximum support. And it won't be just boring advice. Some foods will definitely surprise you. Let's open the fridge and take a look at what's actually working for your health or against it. Many are surprised when I say, food is your first medicine for prostatitis and even cancer prevention. And on the flip side, some foods, like your favorite fried sausages and margarine-laden buns, do exactly the opposite. So let's start with the heroes. First, tomatoes. They're rich in a compound called lycopene, a powerful antioxidant that protects prostate cells from damage. Fun fact, cooked tomatoes, like in sauce or paste, actually contain more lycopene than raw ones. Second, green tea. No, it doesn't just refresh. It helps reduce inflammation, which means it lowers the risk of chronic prostatitis. Just please, no sugar and not the kind in tea bags. Third, fatty fish like salmon or mackerel. The omega-3 fatty acids in them act like an anti-inflammatory cream from the inside. They help not only the heart but also the prostate. Now for the antagonists. First, processed meats, sausages, hot dogs, bacon. They're not just hard to digest, they trigger oxidative stress, one of the contributors to aging and cancer. Second, alcohol, especially strong and frequent. It disrupts hormonal balance and increases inflammation in the body. And of course, sugar. Not the kind in apples, but the industrial kind found in cookies, sodas, and flavored yogurts. Sugar isn't just calories. It feeds inflammation. You don't fertilize weeds, do you? If you start thinking of food not as treats, but as tools, your prostate will thank you. By the way, I have an elderly patient who eats tomatoes almost every day. He's 82 and recently started jogging. Coincidence? In the next part, we'll talk about physical activity, but not the kind you're used to. No need for gyms. There's one type of movement that's especially beneficial for the prostate. Gyms, barbells, sweaty shirts, loud coaches. Not everyone's cup of tea, especially after 60. But you know what's funny? The prostate doesn't ask you for marathons or heavy squats. It just wants you to move. One of the most underrated types of physical activity for men's health is simple walking. Yes, that's right, calm, upright walking in the park or around your yard. Studies show that 30 minutes of walking a day can significantly reduce the risk of inflammation and even prostate cancer. Sounds simple? That's because it is. But almost no one does it. Did you know that sitting for long periods, over 6 hours a day, reduces blood flow to the pelvic area? That creates favorable conditions for congestion, and as a result, inflammation. Regular walking improves microcirculation, balances hormones, and even helps with better sleep quality. Here's another fun fact. Men who walk their dogs statistically suffer from prostatitis less often. Why? Because they have a reason to move even when they don't feel like it. And laziness, as we know, is the worst advisor after 60. And here's a strange but true fact. One of my patients started practicing active sitting. He simply rocks forward and backward on the edge of his chair every hour. And after a month, his sleep improved at night and the feeling of pressure in the lower abdomen disappeared. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe it's just microcirculation doing its job. So forget the phrase, "I'm too old for exercise." You don't have to become a bodybuilder. But if your prostate is stagnant, movement is your best friend. In the next part, we'll talk about what destroys your progress the fastest. You can eat tomatoes, walk in the park, but if you don't eliminate one factor, it will all be in vain. Imagine building a cozy wooden cottage in the forest, solid foundation, strong walls, sturdy roof. Now imagine setting a corner of that house on fire every night, just out of habit. Sounds silly, right? But that's exactly what thousands of men do every day by continuing to smoke and drink despite all efforts to take care of their health. Yes, friends, no amount of lycopene or walking will save you if you regularly smoke or abuse alcohol. Nicotine is not just bad for your lungs. It narrows blood vessels in the pelvic organs, worsening blood flow to the prostate tissue. This means more congestion, more inflammation, and a higher risk of cell mutation. Now let's talk about alcohol, especially strong alcohol. It damages the liver, disrupts the hormonal system, and interferes with the absorption of essential nutrients, including zinc, which is vital for the prostate. And of course, it lowers self-control, affecting diet, exercise, and even the regularity of your sex life. You may be surprised, but even moderate alcohol consumption 2 to 3 times a week is statistically linked to a higher risk of cancer. And according to some researchers, the male prostate is one of the most toxin-sensitive glands. It's no coincidence that in ancient Chinese medicine it was said, the prostate fears 2 poisons, hot air and bitter water. Hot air refers to sitting still in a sauna. Bitter water, you know what that means. You don't have to quit everything overnight. But if after this video you even slightly reduce your consumption, that's already a win. I always say, every cigarette not smoked isn't just a plus for your life. It's a minus for inflammation. In the final part, we'll put it all together. What does it truly mean to care for your prostate, and how can you build it into everyday life? I know you want a simple answer. What to do to stay healthy? What to drink? What to eat? How many times per week? And that's it. But sadly, the prostate is not a coffee machine. You can't fix it with one button. So what does it mean to truly care for prostate health? It means regularly performing not isolated, but systemic actions, watching your diet, more vegetables, especially tomatoes, less processed foods and sugar. Staying active, walking, moving, sitting less. Cutting out or minimizing bad habits, cigarettes and alcohol. Not ignoring stress. Chronic tension fuels inflammation. And most importantly, regular checkups with a doctor. Yes, even if nothing hurts. One of my friends once said, "I'm afraid to go to the urologist. What if they find something bad?" And I told him, "Are you afraid to change your car's oil because it might be dirty?" A joke, but in truth, prevention is a rescue, not a sentence. Especially after 50. And let's not forget, frequent ejaculation, as science has shown, is not a sin, not a danger, but a part of a healthy lifestyle. It's like cleaning a filter. Not the only measure, but an important one. If you can reduce your risk of cancer by a third, why not try? Now, before we wrap up, I want to ask you, what will you do today to take care of your prostate? Go for a walk? Skip that evening drink? Call your doctor? Or maybe have your first conversation about it with a loved one? Self-care is not weakness. It is strength. And if you've watched this video to the end, you're already on the right path. Please support this video. Like it if you found it helpful. Subscribe so you don't miss the next episodes. And most importantly, write in the comments which topics you'd like us to cover next. What's worrying you personally? That's worth talking about, because health begins with an honest conversation. What really happens to your prostate if you masturbate every day? The truth they've been hiding.